Show from Jackson Interfaith Shelter, Steve Castle, CEO. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Bart?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Great to have you back.
Thank you.
It was nice seeing how great your block party went a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys coming out, and you took some great pictures, so thank you for doing that. And we're really thankful because that was the week of about 3 days earlier was when that big storm came through. A lot of people lost power. There were limbs down everywhere. And then the next Saturday, it was that day where it rained for about 14 hours straight. So our day was really hot, but it was totally sunny and just a beautiful day. So we're really thankful that we kind of hit it just right for the weather, because an outside event with terrible weather is just hard to pull off.
That's right. We had great turnout, and I think it's because you've established this. It's the, I think, second annually.
Yep. And
you also threw in some pomp and circumstance with a ribbon cutting. Tell us about what the ribbon cutting and who's involved, your board, all of that.
Yeah, so we've been working really hard just to make updates that really just take care of people at a different level. We don't want people to just think, hey, it's a homeless shelter, so as long as it's better than the street, good enough. But we want to say, when people are coming in, we want them to feel welcomed, we want them to feel safe, and really to have a dignified experience. And so we've been working the last year and a half or so just updating almost all of the facilities. So a lot of the pictures you're seeing, it's a new kids playground, it's a whole new dining area. And then the entryway especially was kind of the first part of the project, because it was some metal doors you couldn't really see in, and then you'd step in and then really run into a wall right away. And then you kind of go down this little corridor. So now it's a bright open room with a person sitting there welcoming you when you come in. So whether you were homeless last night or you're a volunteer coming in, you're welcomed and you know where to go and what help you need. And so the ribbon cutting was a celebration of the culmination of that. And we actually, about 2 months ago, just got central air conditioning in the building. And that's been a huge update. We have 76 beds. Just the guys' dorm has 32 beds in it. So if you imagine it's a day where it's 100 degrees and humid and you're sleeping next to 31 other people, just an incredible enhanced quality that they experience. So if you got a job interview the next day, you might actually be able to get some sleep and be successful with that. So we're really excited, because none of the updates were just to, be pretty or throw money at something. It was really, how do we do these things that can take care of people? Incredible community support to make that happen, so that $0 came out of operations to be able to do all those things.
I am really quite surprised to hear about the air conditioning. I guess I never thought about it, but to have that many people without air conditioning, yep. I can't imagine.
Yeah, the first day that I heard somebody say it's too cold in here, I was a little frustrated, but it was actually nice to hear, though, that's a good problem to have, if somebody needs to put a long sleeve on because they're not completely melting, or when we're cranking out several hundred meals, the people back in the kitchen aren't just completely drenched in sweat. So very, very thankful for those updates.
Well, as we heard earlier in the show, we continue to have COVID cases in Jackson, and the hospital has 10 to 20 every week hospitalized. And I know COVID changed how you do things. What's the state of the shelter now, as we hopefully are on the back end of the pandemic?
Yeah, no cases that I'm aware of right now, thankfully. And it seems like it'll be 3, 4, 5 months go by, not a single case, and then randomly you'll have 15 people that test positive. Most of them typically aren't very sick, but what we're doing, we have 2 rooms. So we have a 4-bedroom room and a 6-bedroom room that we're keeping vacant for a COVID quarantine, just in case. And so we're able to have, I think, 66 people can stay in the shelter, and then we're holding those few beds aside for that. So the few times that's happened, it's been really helpful. And then about a year ago, when it was more common, we owned 16 rental units. So one of the ones right next to the shelter, we actually kept empty for about a year. And so every once in a while, we'd have a bunch of cases, and we'd have people stay in that house for the 5 or 10 days that they needed to do. And so kind of just keep navigating as we can. And but the main thing, you want to keep meeting the need. So if you reduce capacity too much, then there's people that are on the street that we should be serving. So we want to make sure that we're constantly having as many people in as we can possibly have.
Yeah, and I think people they don't understand how that works, because people will see what appears to be a homeless person sleeping on a street and make the assumption that we don't have a system for someone like that. But what's the reality?
Yeah, so I mean, it comes and goes. There's different seasons, but yeah, there's a great system in place. I actually, inspired by you, Bart, I have a podcast that I do now. It's called Shelter Together. But really, especially the last couple of years, I think there was just a lot of confusion or misunderstanding, or you don't know what's there. So, anytime you see somebody on the street, especially if it's cold weather, rightfully so, your heart goes out and you just think, is anything happening? Is anybody doing anything? And so what I do is I just interview people at a bunch of different organizations, because there's dozens of folks that are all working with homelessness together. And so I just ask, what piece is your organization doing? And so it's Habitat for Humanity, it's the Aware Shelter, it's TTI that works with the street homeless, it's folks from Community Action Agency. And so each month there's a continuum of care call with about 30 organizations on it. And we're specifically working on the partnerships with homelessness. So if there's a organization that specifically works with veterans or specifically works with the elderly or other needs, we help to make sure they're getting the right support that they need. And of course, Lifeways Mental Health, comes in with a lot of these things too. So they're a great partner.
In 2 cases this summer, I asked someone if they needed help, and they said, no. Do you have a place to stay? Do you know about the shelter? Yeah, I know about the shelter, but they have rules, so I don't want to go there. And that was really 2 people in a row that had that. So there are people that are choosing to live outside because they don't want to follow what are just, they're just standard operating procedures at the shelter. Is that a common situation?
Yeah, sometimes we found sometimes that someone will say that and they've actually never even stayed or attempted to stay. So sometimes if you're looking for resources, you may or may not be honest. Other times that might be the case. As far as our rules, we have almost none. We have 76 people, we have all ages, but you can be intoxicated, inebriated, using drugs, be high when you're staying there, and you actually still have a bed. You can't physically use on our site or have paraphernalia on your person on the site, but beyond that, everybody's welcome. Obviously, if you're inebriated and your actions are putting others in harm and stuff, that might be something that makes you have to go. But beyond that, it's basically anybody's welcome. And then the only background check we do is the criminal sexual conduct, because we do have children staying. But beyond that, any past history or anything, you're still welcome at the shelter, because we're a low barrier shelter. And then 8 p.m. is curfew, and that's just to have a time where people come back, and then it also gives a chance to have a meeting with things that are going on. So yeah, that's the pretty basic, everybody's welcome.
And the rules, the restrictions, one of the persons said it was either knives or weapons or something. They said they don't want, I'd have to give up my knives.
Yep.
Oh, okay, well, yeah. And I know you've been in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, and you've seen the problems that they are having dealing with homelessness, and we're nothing like that. It's amazing. And it seems like it's really become a huge problem in those 2 communities in particular in just the last year.
Yep.
And their response, I guess, it's not an easy solution, but it's an apparent problem with as many people as you see right on the streets, laying in alcoves of banks on the main block of the main street.
Yeah, and it definitely the last couple of years it got worse, I think, because some of the supportive services that maybe were in place, maybe folks that used to meet with people started just working remote. So if they say, hey, I'll counsel you remotely if you're living under a bridge, unless they have an iPad and a charging booth there, they probably can't get the services they need. And so some of those things got tricky, and then there's different philosophies on how to help, and so some people approach it different ways that can create sometimes unintended consequences that they might not have expected when they started a new program or process.
Well, just based on that comparison, I'd say what we're doing in this community seems to be working. You've got a lot of people, as you mentioned, the continuum, but in order to deliver the services, you need a lot of things. You need volunteers, you need donations. How can what are the things that the community can provide you with right now?
And I will just mention, just kind of a side thing. So TTI, which is Training and Treatment Innovations, they work here in Jackson, but they actually work specifically with the street homeless. So I do tell people, if you ever see somebody and wonder, is anybody aware that this person's on the street? Is anybody helping them? it's Training and Treatment Innovations. Their number's online, but they specifically go to that person. So if you said they're on the corner of this, and this, call them and they would actually verify. Typically, they've already met with the person. They'll say, oh, yep, I've met with them and we're working on this or that. But just sometimes that's helpful to know that somebody's aware and somebody's meeting with them. So just wanted to make sure people are aware. They do a great job. Their team is
Yeah, that's
great
true,
partners.
and that's been a response. It's people know they're there, and you're not the first person to.
And if not, check and let them know, and they'll be out there. But yeah, you're asking kind of just ways that people can partner. We're always grateful to have volunteers. We do 50 to 60,000 meals a year, so we have a kitchen manager, but people that come alongside and help prepare things and serve meals. Also, just brings a fun atmosphere, for the people coming through the shelter to have different volunteers, and we'll have families that come in with their kids of all ages, so that's a cool experience for them to start learning how to serve and to think outside themselves. We have school groups that'll come. We have Consumers Energy has different teams within their staff that'll come and serve, which is great. So it's a mix of everybody. And then for those that like to give, we've got a Amazon wish list, so we try to keep it up to date with small and big things. So if somebody says, our Sunday school group would like to donate $20 towards something, we try to have something at that range that they could do, whether it's some towels or silverware, and then we have up to bigger items too that are also really helpful. So we try to keep that up to date so that people know anything they're getting is a practical thing that we will definitely use, and it takes the guesswork out. And then if anybody ever wants to call, if they have something, and we'll even take catered food. So sometimes a wedding or an open house gets over and there's just tons of Gene Davis food left over, and we happily accept it as long as it comes in the right amount of time and obviously was properly kept and all that. So it's always a good surprise when I come in and there's ribs for lunch or other things like that. So if there's an idea or a passion, there's probably a way that it could help us at the shelter. And one of my kind of favorite ones, Dr. Palmer is a chiropractor. He comes in once a month and he does free adjustments for all the clients and staff at the shelter. So that's a way that he thought, hey, here's a skill that I have. I'm going to volunteer to help in this way. And
he was at the Martin Luther King Center a couple Sundays ago, offering that for the kids and the back to school bash.
So yeah, it's just a neat way. And then we have barbers that'll come in and cut people's hair. So if they are going to have a job interview, they're feeling better, looking better, more confident. And even some people, they might not have been appropriately physically touched in years. And so to have a chiropractor adjusting you in an appropriate way, your back feels better, but also maybe it's the first time someone's had their hand on your shoulder in a while, which actually can be a cool, positive experience too. So yeah, so I'll have to say, if you're looking to volunteer, check out our website, interfaithshelter.com, or give us a call and say, hey, this might sound like a weird idea, but would this be helpful? And we could chat about it, because that's how the chiropractor started. They said, would this be helpful? I said, I know I'd like it.
Wow.
So
That's
we
awesome.
do it. Yeah.
And if somebody wants to donate things, they can do the Amazon wish list. Or what about clothes and household goods, soaps, toilet papers, things like that?
Yep. So some of those we try to put on there as well. So so even for detergent, we actually do just the strips now. We found that some people, if they hadn't used laundry facilities before and they're doing their personal laundry, they might think, this will make my socks smell way better if I put a whole jug of detergent in the machine, and then it ruins the machines. And so we try to take the guesswork, because we serve 700 plus people a year, and so you don't want to just assume that you know how to use this machine. And so putting the little strips in helps. So we have the certain ones that we use on there that we can use. For clothes, we don't keep a whole lot just because space-wise, we don't have a lot. So we refer people to St. Vincent de Paul, and they'll actually let anybody at the shelter, they just bring a verification letter, and they can have free clothes and outfits and things like that. So we tell people, send your clothing donations there, and that's really helpful for the shelter folks that get them from there.
How's staffing right now?
It's good overall. We have I think we have a half-time second shift position, and then we have some sub positions open. So if anybody's interested, would love to have people apply. We've got a good, solid, fun team in place. Being a 24/7 facility, it's helpful to have subs too, because sometimes you want people to be able to take vacation. So, if somebody thinks, yeah, I wouldn't mind once in a while, helping out if there's somebody that needs a vacation or if somebody's sick, it is helpful to have subs, and it's a cool experience. If you have a heart for work like this, you'll get just a good range of interaction with people that could use your assistance.
Right. Beautiful summer coming to an end. Hopefully a few more weeks of beautiful summer. But then as the weather turns colder, does the Shelter change, do you see an increase in people seeking the services?
Depends on the year. Sometimes there's an increase. Some of the interesting things, sometimes if somebody's bouncing from couch to couch, sometimes if it's winter, that person might be okay and let them stay. And then sometimes when it's spring, they'll say, okay, you've kind of worn out your welcome, and they make them go. So it actually somewhat depends. But there are times that sometimes we'll see an uptick. Last winter, as you know, we partnered with St. Paul's Episcopal Church, just a few blocks from us. Great partnership. We actually just met about an hour or two to go to discuss if that's something we do this upcoming winter or not. So we always want to make sure, especially on the really cold nights, even if somebody had the criminal sexual conduct in their past so that they couldn't stay at the shelter, you still don't want someone to freeze on the street. So making sure, even with some of those tricky situations, when it's really severe weather, that everybody has a place to be. So starting those conversations now, so we're not caught surprised and then in December say, oh yeah, winter happens every year.
It's great service the shelter and you and your team provide.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, and thanks for all the updates.
All right, thanks, Bart.
Good to see you.
You too.
The CEO of the Jackson Interfaith Shelter, Steve Castle. We've got